Ian Tan from Fuji X Aus. Thank you for everyone who attended today's Fujifilm and Nanlite Touch and Try studio shoot session. Um, I hope you all got a lot out of it, and it was really good to see everyone just really trying all different camera bodies and lenses, playing around with different colors on the lighting, changing the direction of the lighting. Uh, that's really the best way to get things out of the workshop, and I hope everyone had a good time. Um, I thought it'd be cool to show you how I edit a couple of the images from today's session. So I'm going to edit one of the images of our model Becky, and also an image from our cosplayer Andy. So let's start with this image of Becky. I was shooting this on a Fujifilm X-H2S, which was my camera, um, and I was using the 35mm f1.4, the good old an oldie but a classic. And just looking at some of the camera information here, I took this at 1/400 of a second at f2. Um, when we when I edit an image like this, I like to have study it first and see what exactly I would do to it. So usually I start by zooming in. So when I zoom in, probably one of the first things uh, that I notice is that um, the focus is just slightly soft around the eyes, um, and that's because instead of shooting at f2, perhaps I should have stopped down to f4. Most likely, then the eyes would be sharp. But you can see that the focus tends to be around this plane of her skin, her cheeks, and also her lips. The eyes are sharp, but they're not as sharp. They're not as sharp as the lips. But anyway, that's just my observation. So let's continue with this edit. So first things I would do is I'd go in and just turn off the default sharpness that Lightroom applies. I'll turn that all the way back down to 0. Reason being, I'm going to do some edits in Photoshop to smooth skin, fix blemishes, that sort of stuff. So um, I don't want to sharpen anything until all that is done, and then I'll reapply the sharpening at the end. The other thing I will do is I will choose the Fujifilm simulation that I want to be baked in before I go into Photoshop, because Photoshop will create a new TIFF file. And once it's created a TIFF file, you cannot go in and apply any film simulations after that. So if you want to apply any film simulations, do it now. Let's just go and have some quick look. I don't want to choose things like bleach bypass because I want to maintain the the life and the warmth in her skin. So at the moment it's on nostalgic neg, which is quite nice. I quite like the look of it. Let's see, classic chrome. It's interesting, but again, it's pulling too much life out of her skin. Um, classic neg is not bad as well, but again, yeah, it's not probably not right for this one. Pro neg standard and pro neg high are usually quite nice for portraiture. Uh, but in this case, I like the nostalgia that nostalgic neg gives. It reminds me very much of, an old Elizabeth Taylor Technicolor still from a movie. It's very classic. So let's go with that. The last thing I'll do is fix up some of the exposure, the underexposure in this image. You can see there's a little bit of room in the histogram on on the highlight side. So um, I'm going to push it up, but I'm going to see what it does to her as I push it up. I don't want it to push up so far that I lose the tonality. So you can see that, this part of the face is getting really bright. You're losing the balance between brightness and shadows. It's too bright now. So even though I haven't reached the end of the histogram, there's still room. I've gone too far, so I'm going to pull it back. Probably there. About there is good, I think. All right, so I'll leave it at that. Um, if you want, you can add a little bit more contrast, but you can do all that later. So, and lastly, white balance. So I'm going to play around white balance. Again, I'm looking for a nice, beautiful skin tone. Let's try daylight. Mm, no, not too happy with that one. Well, it's a little bit green to my eyes, but uh, let's try shade. Oh, let's try auto. Auto is always a good point. That looks nice. It's got a really nice like a cherry glow. Her hair looks beautiful, and her skin tone looks really healthy. So okay, let's go with that. Auto. Um, I'm going to right click and go to edit in Photoshop. Okay, Photoshop. First thing I'm going to do is I'm create a new layer or copy of the background. And in this one, I'm going to fix up blemishes in a skin. So Becky's got beautiful skin. There really isn't that much to fix up. But if you zoom in and if you're going to edit portraiture, generally you want to make the skin look flawless. So things that are naturally part of her, like if she, let's say she had a mole or a birthmark, I would leave that in. Um, but things like pimples, little tiny blemishes on the skin, pock marks, things like that, I'll tend to fix up. So let's do that. I've just clicked on the spot healing brush tool, and then you can just change your brush size to as appropriate, and then just do your healing. And I'm just going to be really quick. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Uh, Again, this is for socials. I'm not using it for a paid job, or it's not going to print or anything like that. If you're going to do that sort of work, you want to spend a little bit more time with it, be a bit more precise, uh, you know, and do it as good as you can. But in this case, I'll get it 80% of the way is good enough, in for socials where people will tend to look at an image for between 3 to 5 seconds if I'm lucky. So um, from that perspective, and just being reasonable about it, spend as much time as you can to get it good, but don't go crazy. So and what I'm looking for is really obvious imperfections, patches, um, things that are like big things that stand out to you straight away when you look at the image. Um, but the little tiny things, don't worry about it for now. Um, Yep, so nose looks fine. Um, some people don't like a shine like this on the nose. If you want, you can sort of heal that out. But I think, yeah, I think it, yeah, all right, I'll leave it. I mean, it's up to you if you want to leave it in. If you think it's distracting, then you'd heal it out. So I'll just heal it out for now, and it's fine. A little bit here on the chin. Um, some of the small dots here. If you want, you can zoom in a little bit more to really get at those details. But again, I don't want to get too close into the weeds, um, into the details. I want to keep my edits really quick and sharp and focused so that I can edit this as quickly and as well as I can in a short amount of time. Um, Looking at her neck, there's this line here, which I just want to look at and just get rid of. I will do another pass called frequency separation to remove even more the smoothing out the skin a little bit more. But for now, I'm just doing things that I can quickly catch with the spot healing. You'll see things like the veins in her skin. Um, you know, don't try and heal those out. It's not. You can catch that in the frequency separation stage. But I'll just try and give her as beautiful skin as I can, and yet try to keep it looking natural. Um, you can see things like a lot of crumpling in the fabric. Again, we can fix that with frequency separation, which is a really cool step. And I think looking at her eyes, okay, a little bit of veins here. So let's see if I can fix that up. Okay, it's most. So it hasn't totally fixed everything up, but it looks decent from a distance. So yep, that looks good. Okay, so let's get to frequency separation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do Shift Command Option E, and I'm going to create a visible step layer. I think if you wanted to do it here, you could do, I can't remember where it was. New. Yeah, I work with shortcuts, so I often forget where it is in the menu, but basically Shift Command Option E. Once you highlight, all your layers below, Shift Command Option E will give you a new layer based on everything merged below. So that's a new layer. I'm going to create a copy. So I've got two new layers which are the same. I'm going to Command G to create a group for them. So those two layers are, there's this group. I'm going to call the group frequency separation. Now the first layer, the top layer, I'm going to call HF for high frequency. I'm going to hide that for now. Second layer, I'm going to call low frequency, and that's the one I'm going to work on first. First thing I'll do is I'll apply a Gaussian blur. Okay, so what this does, or what I'm trying to do, so if I'm just going to put the radius to 0. Which is to 0 for now. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to blur the image where details become, or patches become, color rather than details. So if I push this up, you can see that you're seeing less detail and a little bit more color. Now again, it's even less about detail, more about color. Probably about 3.4, where like there's virtually no detail there, but you can still see the color patches. That's what you want. You can check out another part of skin. Again, it's all just color patches. Okay, so I think 3.4 is good, so I'm going to click OK on that. So now it's applied the Gaussian blur to the whole image. That's not what we want. What I'm going to do is I'm going to now go to this layer called high frequency. I'm going to activate it, make it visible. And I'm going to apply image. And I'm going to apply image with the low frequency layer as the source. I'm going to invert it, blend mode of add. And what you can see is, if I zoom in, you can see that it's basically created like a negative of the image below. So basically what is coming through in this high frequency is the details. The details like skin texture, the lips, and so forth. Okay, so I'm just click on OK for now. And then finally with this HF layer, I'm going to change the blend mode from normal to linear light. Okay, so if you've done these two steps, low frequency and high frequency properly, when you turn off the frequency separation group, it should be no different to the original image. Okay, there should be no visible difference, no blurring, nothing. Okay, it's just the original image. Great. Now, what we'll do now, we'll go back to the low frequency layer. I'm going to use a mixer brush tool. Okay, with the mixer brush tool, I'm going to use a soft round brush. These are the settings: wet 100%, load 70%, mix 85, low 8%, etc. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and I'll show you what happens when I paint repeatedly over a color patch, a patch with color. So in this case, the bags under her eyes, this shadowy part here. Can you see how it's getting lighter? Okay, so I'm going to stop there. I'm going to turn off the frequency separation layer or the group. you can see that what I've done is it's evened out the color in the shadow on the bags under her eyes. Okay, that's with, that's without, it's with. Okay, so I'm just going to continue to color that and get it as basically you can color it to the point where you eliminate it, but I just want to minimize it. And as I do it, you can see that it doesn't affect the texture of the skin. The skin still looks like skin. Whereas sometimes when people over smoothen skin, it doesn't look like skin anymore. It just looks waxy and pale. So that's the before, that's the after. If I zoom out a little bit, it's the before, and that's the after. So it's changed the contour a little bit, and it's still there. But yeah, you can keep painting until it's fixed. So you can then, as you go out a bit further, you can make your brush a little bit bigger, and again, coloring a little bit at a time, just checking your work before, after. Okay. The other thing you'll because it's a mixer brush, the other thing that does is also is that when you go from like light to dark, it tends to mix more of the light into the dark. If you go from dark to light, it does it the other way. So the direction that you are brushing in also matters. So as you can see, as I just slowly brush in one direction, and each brush I'm going click, drag, release, click, drag, release. So, the more I do it, you can see that's the before and that's the after. So you can see that, our bags are being removed. So other people, there are other ways to do it. You can use dodging and burning. That works as well. But I find frequency separation is quite easy to do. It's quite effective. The other thing you want to do is you want to follow the contours of a face. So if her cheeks go like this, you want to go like this with the contour. Um, and you also want to pay attention to, if you're doing this part of the shadow, the shadowy part of a cheek, you want to stay in that. You don't want to try and go across like that. And also try and avoid, and also do avoid areas of high detail like lips, eyes, edges. You want to avoid things like that. So, and what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find patchiness in the skin, and I'm trying to smooth them out. You don't want to smooth out every single thing because shadows define the structure of the skin. So you want to be selective about what you want, but essentially anything that's patchy that can be that looks like a blemish or that looks like a distraction, you'd smooth that out. Okay, so I've done work on that part of the cheek. Let's stop and reassess. Before, after. To me, that looks heaps better. And she already has amazing skin, right? So basically, this is what retouchers do for like magazines and stuff like that as well. Not that I can ever do any of that work; that's way too advanced for me. But this is a bit of what they do, except they do it so much better and so much faster. Okay, I'm just gonna smooth some of these parts again. Again, I'm just trying to follow the contours of the face, and I'm working a little bit at a time. Before, after, before, after. Just a little bit of patchiness here. Trying to generate that. Before, after. Okay, done. Lastly, just fix up a bit of the forehead. Forehead's a bit tricky sometimes to find where the lines are, but generally, if you work small and then big, do things gradually, it'll look better. And do things a little bit at a time. Check before. Now with the nose, there's usually a line going down the nose, so I'll just try to smooth that out. There's a bit of patchiness down here. Make my brush a bit smaller. When you make your brushes bigger, the effect tends to apply much quicker, but obviously over a larger area. So As you get down into these smaller areas, your brush has to become smaller, but obviously you'll have to do more passes to get the effect to manifest. Um, but again, take your time. And again, little steps, and then stop and reassess. Okay, before, after. There we go. That's instantly looking much better. Lastly, bits around his mouth, and finally the chin. Before, after. Okay, let's just do one quick pass around the neck. Oops. Okay, now do you see what happened there? I went from light to dark and it's lightened this shadowy area. I don't want that. So I'm going to undo that. And I don't want to do that because the shadows define the contours of her neck, her collarbones. So you want to be careful. If you're going from light to dark, stay in the light. And similarly in the dark, try and stay in the dark. You can overlap a little bit, but don't go all the way across. Otherwise, you'll get what we just had just now before. So, but again, you don't have to go too aggressive on the body. I generally don't. I'm going to stay really careful around here. There's a bit of veins here, so it's fine. So I'm working really quickly now. So I don't want you to be here all night. And it's worth mentioning that not everyone likes to be photoshopped, and not everyone has to be photoshopped. It depends on your work, it depends on your creativity. Usually best to just have a conversation with your model. Chances are if they're paid, generally, you can do what you want because it's a job. But if you're working with someone or collaborating with them, do check with them. Body image is a sensitive thing for many different people. So always best to be respectful and courteous and sensitive to others. Um, okay, just do a quick check before, after. Yeah. So nothing huge. Again, I'm not looking to do really big things here. Um, some lines here which I probably want to even out. Yep. Okay, done. And the last thing is see these creases on the clothes. Frequency separation can fix those as well. Again, you can just be very judicious about how you do this, but I think just a little bit's fine. Some of the creases here. And again, try and follow the contours if you can. Right, before, after. This is a great thing to like if you've got people in business clothes, business shirts that are crumpled. This will fix it perfectly as well. It's a lifesaver. Before, after. Okay, so let's just zoom out. Let's do a quick little before, after, before, after. So yeah, there we go for 15, 20 minutes work. I think that was worth it. It's made a big difference to the image and to her skin tones. She looks like a goddess. Um, oh, and lastly, I want to just fix up these lines on these floors here because they're distracting to my eyes. So I'm just going to do the merge all visible layers again into one new layer because I'm lazy. I should have picked it up before. I'm just going to go back to a healing tool. I'm just roughly going to heal these lines. Come across, come across, down. Oops, I shouldn't have crossed the clothing. I'm stuffing this up. There we go. Let's make sure I fix that up. It's not going to be perfect, but anyway, again, it's not going to hit a magazine or anything. And lastly, over here. Okay, that's good enough for me. All right, I'm going to save, and I'm going to close out of Photoshop and go back into Lightroom. Okay, you'll see that um, when you close out of Photoshop, it saves it as a new file. So Fuji Tether 025 edit.tiff. So this is the file that's been saved from Photoshop. You still have your original raw file here, but now it's the edited file. And you'll notice with the edited file, you don't have access to the Fujifilm simulations anymore, because that's why we did that step at the very beginning. Okay, so now that we're back here, first thing I'll do is I'll reapply the sharpening. So I tend to keep sharpening to a maximum of 25, depending on especially when there's skin. Um, Fujifilm files can sometimes, it doesn't like excessive sharpening with skin. You get some artifacts with the extran sensor. Um, but depends on the person's skin as well. So if you want, you can go up to 40. I think that should be fine, especially on socials where everyone doesn't necessarily pixel peep. But um, for now, I'm just going to keep it to 25. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the masking slider. So I'm going to click on it and I'm going to hold Option as I drag. Anything that's white is being sharpened. Anything that's black is not sharpened. So you want to pull it so that it sharpens things like edges, eyes, lips. It's okay if it sharpens a little bit of skin, that's fine. But generally, you don't want something like that where every pore on your skin is sharpened. That's not a good look. So you want to just pull that back a little bit, and I think that's probably good. All right. So that now that we've done that, let's do some final quick adjustments. Um, In terms of skin tone, I think that's fine. Let me just try and see if I can warm it up a little bit more. Um, just a touch, not too much, because I think the original, it's okay. Yeah, there we go. That looks much better. Maybe push up vibrance just a bit, just to bring up a bit more color in the hair. Yeah, there we go. Um, Lastly, I'm going to just push up the whites just a touch. There we go. Just make that pop a little bit more and utilize that last bit of dynamic range on the histogram. Um, Finally, I'm going to play with some color grading. So if you like the look of it, that's fine. But this is just purely personal, artistic. I like to introduce a little bit of blue into the shadows. So I'll show you what I mean. If you pull it down to its extreme in the blue, you can see how there's in the shadowy, darker parts of the area, it's now blue. Um, these parts here, all have this bluish tinge. If I change the hue of that to say green, you can see it turns it green. Um, so it's personal preference what kind of shade you like, but blue to cyan tends to look a little bit more cinematic. So something like this. So once you sort of get the hue that you like, then pull back on the saturation, because then it's easier to see at full saturation what you're doing, and then just pull back on it to to your level of taste. The other thing you can do is you can leave it fairly strong, and you can use the balance. So this way is more towards the blue shadows. This way is away from it. So um, pull it a little bit. Oh, you can go towards or a little bit away. So when I pull it away, I'm paying attention to the balance between the natural skin tone color, which is really beautiful, and obviously the blue, the amount of blue you want in the shadows. So I'm going to pull it back that way. Um, yeah, to me that looks really beautiful now. Done. The last thing I want to do is just to reinforce a bit more sharpening and clarity around the eyes. So I'm going to pull a brush. I'm going to add some clarity of 10. I'm going to add some sharpness of 15. Okay. And I'm just going to roughly just paint. I want sharpness around the eyes. And a little bit around the nose. Touch around the hair, especially where the highlights are, just to bring that out. Touch around the shoulder, because that's where the focus is. That's that line. That's a focus. Um, I won't do the hands. The chest is fine. So yep. And lastly, what I want to do is I think the background's a bit bright, so I'm going to create a new mask and select background. I love the new AI selection masks that Lightroom have. It's incredible. I'm going to pull down the exposure, the background, just to bring her out a bit more. There we go. That's lovely. Lastly, and this is personal taste, it's up to you. If you want, you can play with the hue of the background. You can make it look a little bit pink. Oh, that's pretty. Oh, I can go a little bit green. Oh, ew, that's too much. Blue is interesting, but again, it's very old-timey. I think a touch of pink is nice, or something a little bit like reddish, not just a pure white. That's not bad actually. That's the original. I don't know. You can let me know in the comments what you like. I'll keep it original. That's fine. Good old OG. So all I've done is I've just reduced the exposure of the background. All right. Finally, let's do a crop because I want to be this being a portrait. I want it to be really tight. I don't want too much background. So just bring a bit of balance into that composition. I think that's lovely right there. Boom. And personal preference, if you want to add a little bit of a vignette, I think that's about right. Okay, so one final check. Just always have a look at your histogram. If you find that a lot of your pixels are at 50% or less, chances are your image is going to be dark when you post it online compared to images that other people post. And generally, brighter images tend to catch attention better than darker images. So if you need to push up exposure a little bit, do that. But again, don't destroy the tonality. So, I've only pushed up by 0.25, but again, I think I've destroyed some of the tonality in that already. So I'm going to pull it back to 0.1. Pushing up your whites tend to be more effective. It's not as obvious, but it does give your image more pop. So if it's got 23, if I push it up to something like that, yeah, see, it's not as aggressive as exposure. It's a little bit more subtle, but it's quite effective as well. I think I'll pull it back to about 35. That's good. And yep, that's what I'll go with. Done. All right, let's quickly edit Andy's image. So that's an image of Andy. I want to, firstly, what I don't like about this image is there's too much red, like predominantly it's red. There's no contrast about it. It's just pretty flat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the film simulation. I'm going to use something really neutral and toned down. So I'm going to go with bleach bypass. Okay, so that's a good starting point. You can always bring the reds back later, but that allows me to see the image for what it is. Okay, again, looking at histogram, it's pretty dark at the moment. So I think I will push it up just a touch. Okay, or you know what? I am actually going to pull it down a bit more, make it really moody. And then I'm going to push up the highlights, bring back a bit more of the shadows, increase the white, drop the blacks. Yeah, I think that looks a lot more. Add some contrast. Yeah, darken a bit more to highlights. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to bring him out from the background. So by dropping the exposure, it's darkening everything. And then since he is the brightest part of the image, I'm using highlights to bring him out a lot more. Yeah. So before, after. See how he pops out of the image so much more than here because everything was just flat and like bright. So by darkening everything and then bringing out the highlights, it's making the image more dimensional. Okay, perfect. The other thing that I probably want to play with is some aggressive color grading. The good old Hollywood recipe is teal, which is here, and then highlights of um, orange, orange and teal. But since there isn't really much orange in this thing, I'm not sure orange will, but we'll try that anyway. So let's stick with teal. Now, what you can also do is lift the the luminosity of your shadows. So I'm just going to lift it just a touch, because if you notice in movies or even like in TV shows, when you watch it in the dark, the blacks are not totally black. You know, they're usually lifted to a certain extent. So if you click on, let's say, shadows, yeah, if you play with the luminance and have it around 20-ish, I think that's good. You can go further, but it obviously washes out your whole image and makes it look very gray. So I think about 20, between 20 and 30 is probably a good place. Okay. Um, and then you can obviously also just play with the balance again to 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 keep things where they are or where you want them to be. Um, it's good just swinging around the highlights. Sometimes I find that I don't like what the highlights do. So uh, to me, I might just turn off the highlights. Yep, I'll turn off the highlights. I'll leave them as they are. Okay, so coming back to the image, um, the other thing that I want to do is probably just maybe get a bit more clarity out of the image. So you can see when I push clarity out, it really brings out details in his armor, but it also brings out other parts of the image that I don't want. So what you can do is you can use a brush and just apply clarity where you need it. So I'm just going to put clarity at say 20, maybe sharpness about 10. I'm just going to apply it around his helmet. You know, where you can see detail, you can see it actually emphasizes those details. Things like the gun where it's blurry, you don't want to sharpen or make those clearer. Um, and you also have to pay attention to things like you could make this look clearer, but it kind of looks weird because it's not super sharp to begin with. So I wouldn't do that. I'll just undo that. And then that's done. Okay. Now, remember how the original image was kind of red before we changed it to bleach bypass? So here's where we try and restore some of that red. So I'll come into the hue saturation luminosity panel and just increase the saturation of that red. The other way you could do it also is to use this brush. So find a piece of like red here and just increase the saturation of that. There we go. And then you just pull the saturation down on this. Yep. And then you can just do a global vibrance, or you can do a saturation, which saturates everything. I don't think I like saturation. I'll just do the vibrance. Yep, about there. Okay, it's still looking a little bit dark, so I'm just going to push back some of that, bring back some of that exposure. Compensate with contrast, lifting some of that black. Okay, and lastly, I'll just pop a crop on it. I wanted it to look like a movie, so let's go with 16:9 for like a wide angle. Pull it right in, really tight. I'm going to use rule of thirds, so anything around these points of interest will be a good composition. So just pop this corner over his face, like so, and bam, that looks just like a scene out of a movie. Nice. One last thing is I want to try and see if we can put a bit more blue into things. So I'm going to increase the hue of the blue. Nope, maybe not blue. Aqua. There's no aqua in this. Interesting. Okay, scratch that. Doesn't always work. I'm just going to use the temperature to make things overall blue. Yeah, that gives a bit more contrast. So you've got, blues fighting against the reds. And to me, that looks more interesting. Okay, done. That's 2 edits in about, I don't know, half an hour, something like that. So anyway, yep, happy to take any questions if you have any or comments. I'll post this video up on the group, and yep, you can just reach out to me. You can private message me, or you can reach me on Instagram. My handle is @guitarpug. Um, but otherwise, I'm looking forward to see your edits and the photos that everyone's taken over the day, because I could see a lot of you took some really amazing stuff. So really excited. But yeah, thanks again for coming everyone today, and thanks for watching this video. Take it easy.